The young woman stared at the restaurant menu with trembling hands. Her eyes moved from one item to another, but it was clear she wasn't reading anymore. She was calculating, hoping, searching for something she could afford. The waiter stood nearby, patiently waiting, while the crowded restaurant buzzed with laughter and conversation. Then, with a forced smile that barely hid her embarrassment, she quietly pushed the menu away, stood up from her chair, and walked toward the exit. Before leaving, she softly said, "I can't afford this meal." In that moment, something about her expression stopped me cold. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and helping others when they need it most, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe to Secret CEO Stories for more emotional and inspiring stories. I was sitting alone near the window of a small family-owned restaurant in downtown Chicago. It was a rainy evening, and most people were rushing inside to escape the weather. I had just finished a long day at work and decided to stop for dinner before heading home. Normally, I kept to myself, but something about the young woman caught my attention from the moment she entered. She looked to be around 25 years old. Her clothes were neat but worn. Her shoes showed signs of years of use. Her dark hair was tied back hurriedly, and exhaustion was written across her face. She looked like someone carrying a weight far heavier than anyone around her could see. When she left the restaurant, I noticed she wasn't angry. She wasn't demanding sympathy. She simply accepted her situation and walked away quietly. That was what stayed with me. Most people would have looked away and continued eating. For a few moments, I almost did the same, but something inside me refused to let the image go. I paid my bill and followed her outside. Rain poured heavily onto the sidewalk. She stood beneath a bus stop shelter, staring at the street while trying to stay dry. She looked defeated, as if life had delivered one disappointment too many. I approached carefully and offered to buy her dinner. At first, she refused immediately. Pride and dignity filled her eyes. She thanked me politely and insisted she was fine, but it was obvious she hadn't eaten all day. After a few minutes, she finally agreed. What I thought would be a simple meal turned into a story that changed my life forever. Inside the restaurant, she ordered the cheapest item on the menu despite my encouragement to choose whatever she wanted. She ate slowly, almost apologetically, as though she felt guilty for accepting help. As we talked, pieces of her story began to emerge. Her name was Emily. 6 months earlier, her mother had suffered a severe stroke. The medical bills had drained every dollar the family had saved. Emily had dropped out of graduate school to care for her mother full-time while working multiple part-time jobs. One job became two jobs became three. Still, it wasn't enough. Rent continued rising. Medical expenses piled higher every month. Sleep became a luxury she rarely experienced. Yet she never complained. She spoke about her mother with love rather than frustration. She talked about responsibility instead of sacrifice. Every sentence revealed a person who kept giving, despite having almost nothing left to give. As she finished her meal, I couldn't stop thinking about how many people struggle silently every day. People pass them on the street. People sit beside them in restaurants. People work with them. Yet nobody knows the battles they're fighting. Before we left, I asked one simple question. What would change your life right now? She didn't mention money. She didn't mention debt. She didn't mention herself at all. Instead, she said she wished she could finish her education, because it would allow her to earn enough to provide proper care for her mother. Her dream wasn't luxury. Her dream was stability. That answer stayed with me long after we parted ways. That night, I couldn't sleep. The more I thought about Emily, the more I realized how unfair life can be. Some people work incredibly hard and still find themselves trapped by circumstances beyond their control. The next morning, I began making phone calls. I contacted friends, colleagues, and community organizations. I reached out to educational foundations. I spoke with people who could help create opportunities. Over the following weeks, a plan slowly came together. What Emily didn't know was that dozens of strangers had become invested in her future. People she had never met wanted to help. People who heard her story couldn't forget it. Together, we arranged something extraordinary. A local scholarship foundation agreed to review her academic record. Former professors provided recommendations. Community members contributed toward transportation costs and educational expenses. But there was still one challenge. Emily knew nothing about any of it. I wanted everything to be genuine. I wanted her to understand that kindness still existed in the world. Several weeks later, I invited her to meet me at a community center under the pretense of attending a small fundraising event. She arrived looking confused. The room was filled with people, volunteers, teachers, local business owners, former classmates, even neighbors she barely knew. As she entered, the room became silent. Then a presentation began. Photos of her caring for her mother appeared on a screen. Mans from people whose lives she had touched were read aloud. Stories emerged of small acts of kindness she had performed without expecting anything in return. One elderly neighbor described how Emily delivered groceries during snowstorms. A former classmate recalled how she spent hours tutoring struggling students. A nurse shared how Emily comforted patients while visiting her mother in the hospital. The room filled with emotion. For years, Emily believed nobody noticed her sacrifices. She was wrong. Everyone had noticed. They simply hadn't found the right moment to tell her. Then came the final announcement. The Scholarship Foundation awarded her a full educational grant. Her tuition would be covered. Her books would be covered. Additional support would help with transportation and caregiving expenses. For several seconds, she sat completely frozen. Then tears streamed down her face. Not quiet tears, not polite tears, the kind of tears that come from years of carrying pain alone. The kind of tears that appear when hope finally returns after a long absence. The entire room stood and applauded. Some people cried alongside her. I certainly did. But the story didn't end there. Over the next 2 years, Emily worked harder than ever. She returned to school. She excelled academically. She continued caring for her mother. Somehow, she balanced responsibilities that would have overwhelmed most people. There were setbacks. There were difficult days. There were moments when giving up seemed easier. Yet she never quit. Every challenge became another reason to keep moving forward. Eventually, she graduated near the top of her class. Soon after graduation, she secured a position with a respected healthcare organization. The salary transformed her situation. For the first time in years, she could pay bills without fear. For the first time, she could afford proper treatment for her mother. For the first time, she could look toward the future with confidence. A few years later, I received a letter. Inside was a photograph. Emily stood smiling beside her mother, who had recovered significantly. Behind them was a small office bearing a sign with Emily's name. She had started a non-profit organization dedicated to helping family caregivers access educational opportunities. At the bottom of the letter, she wrote something I will never forget. She said that one meal changed everything, not because of the food, not because of the money, but because someone chose to see her when she felt invisible. Someone chose to stop when others kept walking. Someone reminded her that kindness still existed. Reading those words brought tears to my eyes. The truth is that none of us know what another person is carrying. The stranger sitting across from us may be fighting a battle we cannot imagine. A simple act of compassion can become the turning point in someone's life. Sometimes the greatest gifts aren't measured in dollars. They're measured in hope. Before we reach the end, I have a special request for you. Please comment below with the words, "Kindness changes lives." If you believe one small act of compassion can create a ripple effect that lasts forever. Today, whenever I pass that same restaurant, I remember the young woman who quietly said she couldn't afford a meal. I remember the sadness in her eyes. But most of all, I remember what happened afterward, because kindness is powerful. It travels farther than we ever expect. It reaches people we may never fully understand. And sometimes, when we choose to help a stranger, we don't just change their life. We help them change countless others. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your friends and family, leave a comment, and subscribe to Secret CEO Stories. Your support helps us continue sharing emotional stories that remind the world that compassion, generosity, and humanity still exist. And remember, the smallest act of kindness may become the biggest miracle in someone's life.